Imagine your city announces that they're going to spend $50 million this year on community revitalization.
Which is a massive number.
Right, a huge number. And they're launching all these new job training initiatives, building local health clinics, handing out housing grants, and, everyone applauds.
Naturally. It looks like progress.
Exactly. But now, imagine fast-forwarding 20 years, and, well, nothing has actually changed.
Yeah.
The poverty rate is completely identical. The schools are still struggling just as much. The exact same neighborhoods are still trapped. So you have to ask, where did all that money actually go?
It's a staggering realization.
It really is.
Yeah.
And today, in this deep dive, we're looking at this deeply uncomfortable paradox. You have, maximum human effort, billions of dollars spent year after year, and yet it yields almost zero generational change. It's like pouring water into a leaky bucket, but without ever actually bothering to map out where the holes are.
I love that analogy because it really forces a reckoning, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if $50 million over 2 decades doesn't move the needle, you have to stop and ask a very dangerous question. What if the problem isn't a lack of resources at all?
Right. What if we're just completely missing the point?
Exactly. What if we are fundamentally misunderstanding the actual nature of the crisis?
And, well, that is the exact premise of today's deep dive. We are exploring some really phenomenal source material today. Excerpts from John Martin's Building Thriving Communities, the backstory.
It's a fascinating read.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because this isn't just, a critique of what's broken. It's a completely new blueprint. We're going to explore this massive shift from traditional community funding to, a systems-level architecture.
Which is desperately needed.
Yeah, and ultimately, we're going to uncover the complex strategic needs that drove the creation of a really unique dual-engine partnership. These two distinct entities, MSI and MSIGC, working in tandem to pull off what no single organization ever could.
And that's a crucial shift in perspective because the default assumption for half a century has simply been, well, more.
Just throw more at it.
Exactly. The idea that struggling communities just need more money, more localized programs, more targeted interventions. But the thing is, Martin didn't start his work in some university lab running theoretical models.
Right. He was actually on the ground.
He spent 3 decades purely observing communities across all sorts of different geographies and demographics.
And what he found, which I thought was wild, is that it doesn't matter if you're in, a rural coal town or a super dense urban center. He just kept seeing the exact same pattern of failure.
It's incredibly consistent.
Yeah. And he breaks it down into this chain reaction of 3 interconnected issues. But to really wrap our heads around them, we can't just, list them out. We have to look at what this actually feels like for a resident.
Put a human face on it.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's say you have a single mother, we'll just call her Sarah, and she needs immediate help. First, she runs into the problem of fragmentation.
Right, first broken cog.
Yeah. She needs rental assistance, so she goes to a nonprofit downtown. But she also needs a job, so they send her to a completely different workforce agency miles away. And then her kid has asthma, so that's a third clinic somewhere else entirely.
It's a maze. And what's fascinating here is the tragedy of that fragmentation. None of those 3 organizations are talking to each other.
Not at all.
They each have their own independent mission statements, right? Their own specific grant funding, their own siloed databases.
So Sarah isn't experiencing a cohesive support system. She's just being forced to navigate this totally disconnected bureaucratic maze just to survive the week.
Exactly. Which directly creates the second catastrophic failure. Because these organizations are so siloed, they only focus on their specific leg of the relay race.
Right.
So the workforce agency gets Sarah a warehouse job, high fives all around, they close her file.
Mission accomplished, right.
On paper, yes. But what happens a month later when Sarah's car breaks down and she can't get to the warehouse and she loses the job?
She's back to square one.
Worse, sometimes. That gap, that moment where she completely falls through the cracks because her initial success was totally fragile, Martin calls that the missing middle.
The missing middle. Wow. So the initial intervention happened, but there was zero scaffolding to keep her there.
Exactly. And this is where we have to look at the mechanics of why the missing middle even exists. I mean, it isn't because the people working at these nonprofits don't care about Sarah.
No, they're usually incredibly dedicated people.
Truly. But it's a direct byproduct of the third issue Martin identified, which is measuring activity instead of transformation.
Oh, this part blew my mind. It's like a gym. right? A gym counting how many memberships they sold this month while completely ignoring whether anyone actually got healthier.
That is the perfect analogy.
Like, if you sell 1,000 memberships, but nobody's blood pressure drops, did the gym actually do its job?
In the nonprofit world, unfortunately, that gym analogy is tied directly to their survival. If an organization's primary grant pays them strictly based on number of jobs played,
It's the activity metric.
exactly. They literally cannot afford to spend their resources tracking what happens to Sarah 2 years down the line. They are paid for the placement, not the long-term transformation of her life. They're basically siloed by their own narrow funding metrics.
Wait, but, okay, surely at a leadership level, these organizations know they're failing to provide that long-term support, right? Why wouldn't they just, I don't know, voluntarily start sharing data to catch people like Sarah?
Because the system incentivizes competition, not collaboration.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Nonprofits are often fighting for the exact same limited pool of philanthropic or government dollars.
Oh, I see.
So if you admit, hey, our job placement program doesn't actually work unless this other organization handles the childcare and transportation.
You risk losing your funding.
Precisely. You lose it to someone who promises a simpler, cheaper fix. They are trapped in the exact same broken machine as the residents are.
That is so deeply frustrating. So if the machine is fundamentally designed to produce these isolated, fragmented outcomes, well, you can't fix it by just adding another gear. You can't just drop a new childcare program into the maze and hope Sarah bumps into it.
No, you can't. You have to change the entire mental model.
Which brings us to the ecosystem epiphany.
Yes. This is the massive pivot point in Martin's research. We have to stop viewing communities as just a collection of competing programs and start understanding them as living, breathing ecosystems.
When you read the source text, it lays out this interconnected loop so starkly. Like, educational performance dictates workforce readiness. You just cannot separate them.
You really can't.
And the workforce readiness dictates your income level. Income immediately dictates housing stability. Housing stability directly impacts your physical and mental health. And then health loops right back around to affect a child's educational performance. It's all one single vibrating web.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, if you pull on one thread, the whole web moves.
Right.
You cannot treat a housing crisis without understanding its impact on the local schools. You can't train someone for an advanced manufacturing job without ensuring they actually have the health and family stability to show up every day. In an ecosystem, isolation is fatal.
But, okay, knowing that everything is interconnected creates a massive operational nightmare, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, how do you actually manage all of those moving parts without just collapsing under the weight of it?
Well, that's where Martin introduces the concept of building thriving communities, or BTC. He calls it a community operating system.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me, because I was thinking about this exactly like a smartphone.
Okay, how so?
Well, you have all these individual apps on your phone, right? Your maps, your camera, your messaging. In a community, those apps are the individual nonprofits. The food bank is an app. The job center is an app.
The clinic is an app.
Exactly. But if the core operating system of your phone is glitchy or outdated or just fundamentally broken, none of those apps are going to run properly.
That's a great point.
They can't sync, they crash, they just drain your battery. BTC is designed to be the foundational operating system that allows all those individual apps to plug into a shared environment.
And to take your analogy further, think about how an operating system actually functions in the real world of community development. It means establishing a shared data backend and a unified set of metrics.
So they actually talk to each other.
Exactly. So if a mentor from a youth program logs a note that a family is suddenly facing eviction, the housing assistance team immediately sees that data point in real time.
Oh, wow. They aren't waiting for the family to wander into their office 3 weeks later.
Right. The system reallocates resources proactively. It forces organizations to stop treating symptoms and start treating root causes.
The text outlines 3 specific layers to making this operating system work too. First, discovery and design, which is basically auditing the community to see what assets already exist and where the deepest fractures are.
The baseline, yeah.
Then second, human activation, actually getting the residents involved in the solution. And third, sustainability and growth building the long-term infrastructure so you don't just fall right back into the missing middle.
It's an incredibly logical progression. But here's the reality of ecosystems. Even a perfectly balanced ecosystem will eventually stagnate if it doesn't have an engine.
Right, it needs fuel.
Exactly. You can align all the local resources flawlessly, but you need a catalyst that generates new energy and new wealth.
And the BTC framework identifies one very specific element as that ultimate catalyst: entrepreneurship.
It is the foundational pillar.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship does the heavy lifting that grants simply cannot do. It creates localized jobs, it naturally develops community leaders.
And it forces innovation, right? Like innovation that is specifically tailored to the geography of that specific neighborhood.
Exactly. And crucially, it retains wealth locally rather than watching every single dollar bleed out to external corporations headquartered out of state.
Okay, I have to be honest here, because when I read the part focusing so heavily on entrepreneurship, I was highly skeptical.
I think a lot of people are.
Right, because are we really expecting an entire neighborhood of struggling, exhausted folks to suddenly become startup founders? I mean, not everyone wants the terrifying risk of payroll and business loans. Some people just want a stable 9-to-5.
And that's totally fair. It's actually the most common pushback this framework gets. But the source material addresses it by decoupling the word entrepreneur from, the image of a Silicon Valley tech founder.
Okay.
It is entirely about a psychological shift, because traditional community development inherently treats residents as passive consumers of opportunity.
A grant provides a program. The resident consumes the program.
Precisely. You wait in line and take what is offered. But injecting an entrepreneurial spirit into an ecosystem is designed to shift individuals from consumers of opportunity to creators of opportunity.
Creators.
Yes. It's about instilling a mindset of local ownership, extreme agency, and problem solving.
I hear that, but let me push back on that just a bit further.
Sure.
I get the mindset shift, but, mindset doesn't pay the rent. How does thinking like an entrepreneur actually bridge the gap if you're still working a standard hourly warehouse job?
Because an entrepreneurial mindset fundamentally changes how you interact with your environment.
Yeah.
Let's say you work at that warehouse. Maybe you identify a massive inefficiency in how they handle shipping.
Okay.
Instead of just doing your shift and going home, you propose a solution to management. Or maybe you create a small logistics side hustle that solves that specific problem for multiple local warehouses.
I see.
And even if a resident never starts a formal business, if they approach their child's failing school with an entrepreneurial mindset, meaning they organize parents, demand specific resource reallocations, and architect a solution rather than just complaining to the principal, they are acting as a catalyst.
Oh, wow.
They are taking ownership of the ecosystem.
Okay. So is the difference between waiting for the city to finally come fix the massive pothole on your street versus figuring out how to organize your block, source the asphalt, and fill it yourselves?
Exactly. It's aggressive agency.
Aggressive agency. I like that. But recognizing that you need this massive interconnected ecosystem and realizing you need to foster this aggressive local agency, well, that brings us to a massive operational wall.
It does. The ultimate friction point.
Right. Who actually does the work?
Yeah.
Because recognizing the interconnected web is great in theory, but actually managing the data, analyzing the local economy, while simultaneously coaching a single mother through a childcare crisis. I mean, no single organization can do that.
It's mathematically impossible. If one nonprofit tries to be the high-level data analyst, the corporate liaison, the housing expert, and the deeply empathetic on-the-ground counselor, they will fail at all of them.
So what does this all mean? That impossible tension, that strategic need to have incredibly high-level architectural planning happening at the exact same time as messy, human, on-the-ground relationship building is what organically forced the creation of the specific partnership at the center of this text.
The dual engine model.
Exactly. Martin Sloane International, which we'll call MSI, and the MSI Global Campus, or MSIGC.
This raises an important question, though, about how they actually divide that labor.
Right. And to summarize it, the best analogy I could think of is building a house. MSI is the architect drawing the blueprints, and MSIGC is the master contractor actually pouring the foundation alongside the community. You cannot build a home with only one of them.
That perfectly captures it. MSI is the strategy engine. They are asking the macro questions. They handle the economic development strategy, the integration of AI, the overarching structural planning.
The blueprint.
Right. They are figuring out the metrics of success, so we aren't just counting gym memberships. They analyze the soil of the community before anything's ever built.
But a bunch of brilliant architects staring at blueprints in an office cannot build a house. You need builders on the site. Someone dealing with the immediate, visceral reality of the materials and the weather. That is the second engine, MSIGC, the Human Activation Engine.
If MSI is the blueprint, MSIGC is the human heartbeat. Their mission isn't just to drop programs into a neighborhood, it's to develop the people living there. They are the ones actually on the ground delivering the mentorship, running the youth engagement, and facilitating the leadership development.
Let's ground this in a hyper-specific human reality again. Let's go back to Sarah, our single mother from the beginning of the deep dive. What does this dual-engine approach look like for her?
Okay, so under the old fragmented system, Sarah got a warehouse job, lost her childcare, and fell straight into the missing middle.
All right.
Under the BTC framework, it works entirely differently because of this dual-engine partnership. First, MSI, the architects, analyzes the local economy and realizes warehouse jobs are actually declining, but there is a massive shortage of healthcare technicians in Sarah's specific zip code.
Oh, interesting.
So MSI draws the strategic roadmap and secures high-level corporate partnerships with local hospitals.
So they build the pathway.
Yes. Then MSEC, the Human Activation Engine, steps in. They don't just hand Sarah a flyer for a medical tech class. MSCC provides a dedicated mentor. We're talking about someone sitting across from Sarah at a local diner, looking her in the eye, and figuring out what she actually needs to succeed.
A real human connection.
Exactly. So when Sarah says, hey, I can't take this class because I don't have childcare on Tuesdays, MSCC taps into the broader collective of resources to solve that specific, localized problem for her.
And here is the genius of the mechanism, the part that really clicked for me.
Yeah.
Because they share the same community operating system. That mentor at the diner logs the childcare issue into the shared backend.
Yes.
And the strategists at MSI immediately see a spike in localized childcare shortages that are preventing educational access. So MSI can then pivot their strategic funding to incentivize a new neighborhood daycare.
Which creates a new local business tying right back to the entrepreneurship pillar.
Wow. You see how the cogs are finally turning together instead of grinding against each other?
It completely solves fragmentation because MSI and MSIGC share the exact same vision and data.
Right.
And it eradicates the missing middle. MSI is tracking the long-term 5-year economic data of the neighborhood, while MSIGC is providing the ongoing day-to-day human mentorship that keeps Sarah from falling off the cliff when her car breaks down.
One literally cannot exist without the other. Architects without builders are just staring at hypothetical paper. Builders without architects are just nailing boards together blindly and the house will eventually collapse.
Exactly.
This dual-engine design is the profound difference between merely delivering isolated programs and actually building self-sustaining systems.
And that is the ultimate takeaway from Martin's work. I mean, we have spent decades treating the symptoms of poverty and stagnation as if they exist in a vacuum.
Which they don't.
Not at all. This framework demands that we respect the complexity of the ecosystem. It demands rigid, data-driven strategy paired flawlessly with deep human empathy.
We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today. We started with the harsh reality of the $50 million wasted on broken systems. We walked through the maze of fragmentation, the trap of the missing middle, and the fatal flaw of counting activity instead of transformation.
And then we explored the shift to the community operating system. Understanding that education, health, and housing are a single web. We look at how an entrepreneurial mindset shifts residents from passive consumers to aggressive creators of their own environment.
And finally, we dissected the mechanics of the solution. The strategic, undeniable need for the MSI and MSIGC partnership. The architects and the builders working in total unison to achieve actual generational impact.
It takes the abstract academic idea of an ecosystem and gives it a very real, very actionable engine.
It really does. So as you go about your day-to-day, I want you to look around your own life. Look at your workplace, look at your local government, or even, your kid's school. Are the people and departments around you operating in competitive, disconnected silos? Are they fragmented? Or are they acting as an aligned ecosystem, sharing a single operating system where data and empathy actually flow freely?
It's a fascinating lens to look through because once you start looking for fragmentation, you see it in almost every institution we interact with.
You really do. And I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over today. We started this deep dive talking about the billions of dollars poured into broken systems. But if we truly start viewing our communities as deeply interconnected ecosystems, where housing strictly dictates health and health strictly dictates education, well, how does that change the way we view individual failure?
That's a profound question.
Right. If the system is a tightly woven web, does personal failure in a community even exist in a vacuum? Or is that failure just a tragic, highly visible symptom of a misaligned system? Just a glitch in the operating system that we simply haven't bothered to update yet? Something to think about.